Hello and welcome to Breakfast All Day. I'm Matt here with Christy and Alonso. Amazon Prime has a movie called Radioactive, starring Rosamund Pike and Sam Riley. Alonso, will you please tell us what is Radioactive?
Sure. So this is a biopic about Marie Curie, not the first one actually. In 1943, Greer Garson starred in Madame Curie, which I've never seen, and I imagine is quite a bit different from this one. It's directed by Marjane Satrapi, who did the autobiographical Persepolis, but has gone on to be a live-action filmmaker. I still haven't seen The Voices, which I hear is really good, and I haven't seen it. But anyway, so this is, you know, on the one hand, it kind of sets you up for being this sort of standard, like, you know, great woman of science biopic. But they discover radium in the first half hour, and you're like, okay, that's like singing your hit single first. Like, you know, where is there to go? And then it turns out there's a lot about Marie Curie's life I did not know. After the death of her husband, she was involved with a married man and became a scandale in France. She became an advocate in World War I for taking X-ray machines out to the battlefield so that they weren't just amputating limbs willy-nilly. And the movie also kind of deals with the reverberations of the discoveries that she and her husband made. So we see a child in the 50s getting radiation treatment for cancer. We see the dropping of one of the atom bombs on Hiroshima. We see Chernobyl. You know, we see the good and the bad that came out of the discovery of radioactivity and of, you know, what uranium does and can do. So I think that sort of saves it from being a by-the-numbers biopic. I really enjoyed this. Rosamund Pike is Marie Curie, and she's great. And I just found it really fascinating. Sam Riley, who has now played Ian Curtis and essentially Dean Cassidy in On the Road, is now playing Pierre Curie. So that's an interesting hat trick. Yeah, so I think it's a stylish film. It's provocative. It brings up issues about, you know, it's not just the like, oh yeah, they invented radium and then we all go home. Like, no, that radium is still a thing that we're having to deal with in a lot of different ways. And the movie kind of addresses that. Anya Taylor-Joy pops up in the third act as the Curie's grown daughter. Yeah, I dug it.
I really like the instinct behind the time hopping because for a while in the beginning, it feels kind of like Drunk History, Marie Curie, because like she's getting kicked out of her lab at the University of Paris for doing all these unorthodox experiments. And she's like, I came here from Poland to be a scientist. And she's like, there's a lot of people standing around explaining themselves and explaining sciencey things to each other in various labs.
They do give you a dinner where like the lady who is not a scientist is asking questions. So it's like, here's where we get to tell the audience how radium works.
Science. So that is problematic, and that is by the numbers and certainly unworthy of the great Rosamund Pike. And I appreciate the instinct behind the flash forwards to show you the repercussions of this discovery, but they are so jarring in the way that they are introduced, in the way we get yanked out of a moment to go to a different moment in the future. It's not thrilling. It wasn't for me. It wasn't thrilling. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't, I mean, it's an innovative structural approach narratively, but I found it to undermine the drama so frequently that it ended up being a great distraction. One scene in particular where Marie is really at her lowest and she is like sobbing in the street in a stranger's arms, and it's nighttime as she is just wailing. And as she's wailing, the wail of a fire truck accompanies her cries, because that's taken firefighters to Chernobyl where the meltdown's happening in 1986. And I'm like, here is a really moving piece of acting on the part of Rosamund Pike, and they just yank that out from underneath her to go, hey, look, here's a shiny thing we're going to do with the structure now. We're going to go to Chernobyl where there's another meltdown happening. Here's her meltdown, but real shit's going to go down over here. I thought
that totally worked. I was down for that. I thought you got to have that moment with Rosamund Pike, and then they segue it into this other thing, and I thought that really was effective.
Matt, where do you fall on this?
I think sometimes those scenes actually carried more drama than a lot of the movie, and it's not so much where they're placed so much as like that Chernobyl scene is terrifying, and in like 5 or 6 minutes, you're almost as horrified as anything else in the film. Like the only thing and there's stabs at that come up in the movie, like, you get these shots of Curie walking around with her little vial of radium in her pocket all the time. I do like that this is a movie where I'm always a fan of a movie where you could say the lead actor is the title of the film, and you could do that here. Rosamund Pike is radioactive. Boy, is she. There's the scene where Pierre comes into the lab and he's like, well, we got another letter. Here's all the stuff everybody wants to do. And they start going through that list, and you're like, radium toothpaste. Radium powder. Yeah. This is a solid documentary, and it does show a solid biopic, and it shows a lot of interesting stuff that happened to her that any one of which somebody would try and turn into a movie, right? Discovers not one but two elements, and then has to deal with, because of the scandal, has to deal with this level of bigotry at home where they're all calling her Jewish and she's not.
Calling her a dirty Pole.
Right. But yeah, and they're not happy about that, although then they're like, well, but we'll claim her as our own because she's so amazing. She then helps out in World War I, and part of that is her getting over her own fear of going into hospitals.
Right.
There's a lot of this movie that works really well, like showing the relationship of her and Pierre, in that it doesn't do what a lot of movies will do, which is like, oh, the guy is it fix like Pierre doesn't fix her, right? They are. It's a good partnership, but she still is who she is, and if anything, he's somewhat in her shadow and knows it. And I think the movie lets that happen.
Even though the world is out to treat her as the wife, when
right.
The movie makes it clear that was certainly not the case.
Yeah.
I love her performance. I do. I like how no nonsense she is. I like how she doesn't want to be liked. She's all business. And from her hair to her clothes to the way she addresses people, it's a really strong performance from Rosamund Pike, as they all are. And I also got to mention, you guys know who shot this?
No.
Anthony Dodd Mantle.
Ooh, no wonder.
Well, Danny Boyles.
Because they show you Loie Fuller, this dancer in Paris at the moment, and her fire dance where she's sort of swirling around in fabrics and different color lights. That is like one of the earliest things that was ever captured on film. Like if you see Precious Images or any sort of like documentary about the dawn of cinema, you will see that woman with the swirling white draped stuff around her. And then they work that into the film in a really interesting way, even in like kind of a nightmare scenario later, which I thought was a neat little tip of the hat to sort of the history of cinema, which was beginning to happen at the time that the Curies were making their discoveries.
Yeah, there's a little bit though that I kept thinking of some of the early scenes, especially kind of in the bars of Moulin Rouge, about the Green Fairy. I'm like, it's a movie about absinthe? Like,
but it's really, it gives a sense of like tension and drama to what could have been some very dry scientific material. Like there's one shot where she's sitting in one of their many labs that they've worked in over the years, and there's these really bold streaks of bright white light coming in on her. And as you pointed out with the whole Chernobyl sequence, it is very, very powerfully shot. And so there's real artistry on display here to, liven up what could have been, kind of a boring movie about science.
Yeah, I mean, I think they take some big risks here, but for me, they paid off. I guess obviously not for everyone, but it's I would say I think we would all agree that it's certainly worth seeing for Rosamund Pike's performance.
She's always great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so versatile. I mean, from like between an education, Gone Girl, and this, I mean, she can really, really do everything.
Totally. Yeah. I remember seeing her in Education and Made in Dagenham, was that the name of that movie? Of the women who worked at the car factory who go on strike. Like I just early on, I was like, this woman, this actress, I want to see what she does. And she's always interesting.
And we didn't talk about, she's not until the very end, but Anya Taylor-Joy, I think, puts in a solid appearance as her daughter.
And she's always good too. Like I would have loved more of her. She gets very little to do just in that brief third act section of it. So anyway,
Well, she has some great scenes where she's clearly her mother's daughter in terms of like she's not afraid to ask the hard questions. She's not afraid to confront the great Marie Curie. So I don't know. I think in a few scenes she really nails a character.
And she won a Nobel Prize of her own.
Yes. Later on,
Irene Joliot-Curie won her own Nobel Prize in 1935. I want to say.
And like her parents, also died young because of radiation issues.
Right.
But the other daughter went on to live to be like 102.
Wow.
That's interesting.
What's crazy about this, I looked a bunch of this stuff up. To this day, Curie's notes are so radioactive, they have to be stored in lead. And if you're going to open them up and look at them, you have to wear a full radiation suit and only look at them for a short period of time. Their cookbook at home, their cookbook is crazy radioactive. And so when you see her at home, like making stuff with the little thing, like, oh my God, like what the hell are you guys doing? Right?
What happens when you carry a vial of uranium with you everywhere you go?
Well, it's radium, not uranium, right?
Oh, radium,
right.
Sorry, yes.
Well, and so then at some point there's a story about how when she came to visit the States, was it Woodrow Wilson, I think it would have been, gave her a matching vial of like the same amount, like almost all the radium that had been able to been mined in the States had like somebody had given her that as well.
Oh, wow.
One of the things I did find fascinating in this, was the physical labor that they put into this was
to grind the pitch blend down. Yeah.
That was wild.
Here's the thing. Like early on, I knew this was a movie that was going to sort of not take me down the path I expected, even before they start getting to the flash forwards, because when she and Pierre make their discovery, and again, this is like the first half hour of the movie, they discover polonium and radium, and they present their findings to this like team of old white bearded scientists, and they start explaining that everything we know about the atom is wrong, or that we did also everybody's making these faces and you think, oh, they're not going to believe them and they're going to denounce them and they're going to fight about. No, they immediately like, yay, you're right, you win, you get the Nobel Prize. Like, oh, okay, so we're going somewhere else then,
Right, Pierre, you can have the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he had to fight for her to be included on that one, and then she did eventually win a second one, all on her own. So yeah,
in a different field of study, right?
Like absolutely, yes,
chemistry.
Right. Yeah.
All right, I'm saying 5.8. I admire the innovation in it, just not the execution.
I said 8. I'm a fan. I like this a lot.
I mostly like this. I think it overstays its welcome, and I give it a 7.
Okay, our number's a 6.9.
Okay. Nice. Thanks for watching. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us at BeFastAllDay on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and do check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. Lots of fun exclusive stuff there for our subscribers. Have a good week, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.